Time for our last session of the day now. Well, in the corporate world, sustainability is now a mainstream topic. Our collective consciousness has evolved, and what once seemed idealistic is quickly becoming non-negotiable, and a non-negotiable expectation in terms of responsible leadership. ESG, that's environment, social and governance, has the close attention of consumers and investors alike, as we've been hearing. Well, to discuss the role of technology in getting things right, I'm delighted to be joined by Safra Catz, who is CEO of Oracle. Hi there, Safra. Brilliant to have you with us. Thanks so much. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm thrilled to be talking about these topics.
And they're very important topics indeed. So let's just get straight down to it. Tell me, what role can technology have in terms of basically initiating, pushing, let's say, a step change when it comes to these issues of sustainability?
Well, you know, when I look at it, and when I look at Oracle's responsibility, I actually see it as a twofold responsibility. Not only do I have to take responsibility for my company, making sure sustainability is part of everything we do, whether it's reducing waste, renewable energy, which I think maybe in 3 years we will be 100%, or recycling and reusing. We're already at 99.6%. Whether it's things like that we do for ourselves and in ourselves, or it's making sure that we can help our customer do it much more efficiently, much more sustainably, run their businesses in a way in which consumers can really feel that they have used products and services from organizations who understand how important our earth is and who want to use as few resources as possible, delivering them the products and services they need. It's no longer a nice to have, as all the consumer products companies know. Consumers are picky, and the youngest generation, they won't even use products that they don't feel have been produced ethically or sustainably. And ultimately, that's about having the information to make better decisions, whether they're sourcing decisions or their decision related to distribution. And technology is absolutely critical to have those decisions made with the best analytics, with the best capabilities.
Absolutely, because we are seeing kind of empowered generations coming up there and demanding that change, demanding that accountability, demanding transparency, which is an important step change. Just talk us through how technology helps them in that journey. For example, in terms of that accountability, because we hear all these commitments. How can they know that those companies have actually followed through?
Well, it's absolutely critical that the data is collected from the very beginning all the way through the supply chain. And nowadays, with the capabilities of blockchain, with sensor technology, with Internet of Things, there's so much data. And so many companies are almost overwhelmed potentially with that data. But luckily, the technology to handle the data, to analyze the data, to see patterns, and to bring a complete traceability is both important for authenticity, but it's also important for safety, for recalls, for working with the consumer directly. All those enormous amounts of data, data files, data products are available for the companies to ultimately really harness and not only use it because consumers demand it, but also to have it as an opportunity to better connect with those consumers, getting them exactly what they want. And as I mentioned, that traceability also important when every once in a while something goes wrong. Long gone will be the days where in a supermarket will be a piece of paper and said, if you use this, bring it back. Now, with the real data, understanding also the consumer who's using the product, you can go directly to that consumer and let them know this product, this isn't this has to come back. And all of that is possible only because of large amounts of data and compute capability being so much less expensive with the advent of the cloud.
Data is absolutely key, isn't it, Safra? And I understand that Oracle has been doing some kind of in-depth work on sustainability with Unilever, with Grupo Bimbo, with other big grocery manufacturers. And can you just tell me how these companies really are moving the needle, how you help them move the needle on issues of sustainability, and some of the key lessons you learned, and some of the challenges? What was really hard in doing that?
Well, I'm really glad you mentioned them. Both Alan Jope and Danielle Istribice are going to be speaking and talking about how sustainability is important to them and some of the things they've done. And the reality is there is quite a long path between a product's initial ingredients and the consumer. And that challenge is on the consumer products companies to not only manufacture these products, but deliver them in a way that uses the least amount of resources, that uses the least amount of fuel, that does it in a short amount of time. And in Unilever's case, they've used our technology in travel management to actually cut in half the amount of time it takes them to get a product to the store by using really optimized transportation management, and ultimately get the products to the stores and to the consumers in half the time. And of course, Grupo Bimbo, I'm so fond of them. I feel like I visit them every time I go to the supermarket. Such a premier and important brand, really feeding the world. And, you know, once again, one of the most ethical companies in the world, and recognized as such. They have been able to figure out how to also optimize their distribution for baking such that their scheduling takes half the time. Again, anything that reduces the amount of time and resources used is an enormous savings, which can be reinvested into building better products and making more products at lower prices for consumers.
That's important because there is also, juggling this demand for lower prices. Now, let's just focus on what's been happening just very recently. A lot of countries are still very much under the COVID pandemic, still struggling to get out of it, but it's also accelerated a lot of change, hasn't it? Not least in the retail sector and the consumer goods sector. So if we look at some of those technical advances, these changes, and then try and project to the future, how do you see the industry in the kind of short to medium term?
Well, what COVID really showed us is that if you don't move fast, you are going to really struggle. And that moving fast is absolutely critical. The companies that were able to adjust to consumer needs quickly did very, very well. Those that didn't really struggled and were unable to meet the demands of their users. And this has been extremely important because, of course, the consumer products companies for a very long time have been have been participating in this. But now is really what they've realized now is they've got to throw their whole bodies at it. And it's really showed them that moving fast is not risky, that in fact, moving fast is a real opportunity to be successful, whether it's using better analytics for resource planning or better understanding of the environmental footprint that you're working in. All of these things have really shown that everything is interconnected. COVID affected all of us in many, many different ways, and that it was absolutely incumbent. I mean, the actual essential workers and the essential companies were those that were able to serve the needs of a hungry population around the world in a using the fewest possible resources to do it. And I think it's just an enormous accelerator. And we're going to see more and more of this. And the real success is going to come from those companies who really take this on as a mission.
So you're saying basically the winners and losers will be decided on the speed of transformation. Those that lag behind, they're going to fail?
Well, they're going to struggle. The truth is they are, but they don't need to, because with the advent of the cloud, which is really, when you think about it, what is the cloud? The cloud is really an opportunity to benefit in shared economies of scale. And you can use, it used to be, I've been in technology for, well, it's approaching 40 years actually. It used to be that companies would have to make enormous projects that took very large amounts of time, which closed out the opportunity for smaller companies to participate. With the advent of the cloud, so many of the technologies are actually available, embedded, and inexpensive, such that even smaller organizations can truly benefit from them. And the more they use them, the more they'll see that they can end up using technology, really harnessing it to make better decisions about where they invest and how they should do things. And these benefits go all the way from running their own businesses, their back office operations, ultimately to knowing their consumer better and offering them better products and services right when they need them.
So technology is democratizing choices, informing consumers across the board then. You're saying from the big retailer to the small retailer. You're talking about investment there. What about investment in terms of diversity and inclusion? That's the other byword we're hearing, so much more now, having more diverse and inclusive workforces. What are the benefits to be reaped there? What have you seen in terms of technology?
Well, I will tell you that we've been thinking and working in this area for decades at Oracle. In fact, we've had relationships and partnerships with educational institutions that have specifically focused on underprivileged and less accessible organizations. I can tell you we're selfish about this, and I'll tell you why. We feel like we're always trying to solve very hard problems. A lot of the technology that we're thinking about, we are doing the hard work, the really scary, leading edge, complicated work. And I'll tell you, solving hard problems is the clues in the name. It's hard, and you need everyone part of that. And in fact, sometimes you struggle to solve a hard problem, and really what you need is someone else coming in from a different experience, from a different point of view. And the more you have an inclusive workforce, the more easily you will solve the hardest problems. And we've known that for so long that we went ahead and invested in building a public school, a public high school on our corporate campus, something no other company, at least in the United States, had ever done, because we wanted to bring in and have the opportunity for folks in the community, especially those who are underprivileged, to participate in the knowledge economy. And I think it's very, very important. This whole area is critical to having a a really successful organization. And I guess I'll just share with you, when I came originally to the United States, when I arrived at first grade, I didn't even speak English. And so I understood how difficult it is to be sort of not like everybody else, to not necessarily fit in. And so at Oracle, really for decades now, we've tried to make sure that we are totally inclusive, that people really feel that they can participate in the mission and that it's a shared mission, that we're together and we're diverse, but that's a positive, and it's got to be a priority.
That's got to be a priority, hasn't it? And as you were saying that, it made me think about kind of bias when you've got artificial intelligence, this bias that's just embedded in it. So what has to be done to ensure that you don't have kind of biased data, and therefore machine learning that comes after that is also going to be biased and you replicate the problem?
No, that's very, very true. It's actually something, I'm on a commission where our entire focus is actually artificial intelligence. And that's why it's very important to never take the people out of it, to really have transparency in the data and understandability on it. The worst possible outcome is to have a biased data set that just perpetuates more bias. And that's why it's very important that individuals, that people, that humans participate in the data understanding, and that it has real transparency, because it is absolutely true that the computers do things, and what's important though is we have to understand how they do them and why they do them, so that we can make the value judgments and the decisions on how to do the things correctly and better.
Well, Safra, there's going to be a lot of CEOs listening to you right now on this issue. Maybe they're sitting on the fence when it comes to issues of diversity and inclusion. And, when we talk about diversity, it means a lot of things, doesn't it? It is people from different backgrounds, but it also means including people with disabilities. It's a vast subject, men, women, gender parity. What would be your advice to them to get on the right side of this topic? What are going to be the advantages to them?
Well, they've got to make it a priority. They've got to put it front and center. And they have to understand that it will benefit the entire workforce and the entire business. As I mentioned, I believe there are problems we could not have solved without our incredibly diverse teams. And I will tell you, we're incredibly proud. We have a truly diverse organization. The leaders of my top technical teams and my largest businesses would qualify as diverse. And I'll tell you, their leadership and their teams, irreplaceable for us at Oracle, whether it's our database and Exadata teams or our application teams or our field engineering organization, that whole business, all those businesses for us, it has been going on so long, and they've got to make it a priority, because the world is getting more connected over time, and they've also got to understand the needs of their diverse customers. And having those points of view are absolutely critical in designing and developing the products that make them successful.
Well, let's spell it out for these CEOs then. Kind of define diversity. What does diversity mean to you at Oracle?
Well, I'll tell you, it means people from different socioeconomic levels, different races, different countries, different genders. For us, it's been, listen, I'm incredibly proud. I was one of the early women CEOs. I'm very proud of that. But I'll also tell you, my board of directors is 4 women, and we have a number of diverse candidates on our board, but literally running the major groups. The database head for us comes from Colombia. The head of our applications organization from Mexico. Our largest revenue business, again, African American in our case. And then, of course, I have a fully international team that works directly for me, literally the United Nations. And I feel like without them, I wouldn't be here, and Oracle wouldn't be anywhere close to as successful as it is.
Well, we've been talking about kind of income disparities, how they've widened during the COVID pandemic. In terms of technology then, as you've been saying, it's accessible, far more accessible to all nowadays. So would it be taking it a step too far to say that technology could somehow, if leveraged in the right way, become some sort of socio-equalizer across societies, even across countries?
Oh, there's no question. I mean, what COVID really tested all of us was to figure out how to solve a global pandemic. I mean, for us at Oracle, you probably don't know this, but we actually built and donated to the United States government and to governments in Africa and in Asia a technology capability so that they could share adverse reactions from the different vaccines. We didn't do it as business. We knew that if we had the data, we could build the technology very, very quickly. And so, yes, the United States, yes, Australia, but also African nations. And, for us, we did it as part of our shared mission for the planet, not as a line of business, frankly, because we knew we could. We knew that with the cloud there, with the Oracle Cloud there, but also with all of our technical capabilities, not only our people, but our tools, we could build a system. It's called the vSafe system, Vaccination Safe System, that could allow the whole globe to share adverse results. And one of the things we learned, by the way, was the efficacy of the vaccine and the safety for pregnant people. That, in fact, even though the vaccine early on was not approved for people who were pregnant, it turns out some people got it that were pregnant and things turned out okay. So, using data, we were able to understand the safety of many of the vaccines.
It's interesting what you're saying because, in some respects, what you're saying there is when it comes to health data, can sometimes be the difference between life and death for some people. You get the data right, you can really help the patient in the right way. But if we look at that global data space, how complete is it?
There's still a long way to go. There's no question. But I'll tell you, even 5 years ago, we wouldn't be in the position we are now. The reality is that the technologies are moving so quickly. The ability to transmit data broadly using 5G, the ability to analyze data with machine learning, the ability to pool data and then to distribute it broadly. The technologies are advancing at such an incredible pace right now, and it's everywhere from vaccine safety and things like that to making your food transparency, using blockchain to understand where things came from to make sure they're authentic, that they're safe, all of these things. I mean, the reality is it's still the dawn of the information age. It really is. And yet it is moving incredibly quickly. And the challenge for organizations and, of course, for the CPG companies, which have a special responsibility for safety and to feed the world, I mean, this is an unbelievable opportunity to really embrace it, not only as the right thing to do, but as good business. as a way to do things more efficiently, more effectively, more sustainably.
And so then just finally, you're talking about how this is growing at such an exponential pace. It's the dawn of the technological era. We only got to the dawn so far. So if you look at what's most exciting on the horizon then, maybe as we reach midday or 10 a.m., let's say in technology terms, what's exciting you?
Well, there's no question that the data and understanding it is going to result ultimately in longer lives, more fulfilled lives, less suffering worldwide, and an ability to share and learn from each other. There's no question that our final understanding about the importance of sustainability, of the importance of sharing resources, using less to do more is something that's possible just because of technology and having a better understanding of what's going on around us. And by the way, our consumers are demanding it, and it's getting easier and easier for us to fulfill their demands and making sure they have what they need.
And then just finally, Safra, I don't know if you know this, I've been asking people a word, just one word, and we're going to create a word cloud at the end of this to try and see, what is the kind of guiding thought leading kind of business communities here brought together by the Consumer Goods Forum. So what is your one word that guides you as you think to the future?
Humanity in all its uses. Humanity.
Interesting. I'd like to analyze all these words at some point. It would be very, very interesting to see, male, female, who said what, age groups and such like. Fantastic. Let's leave it with that, with humanity. Many thanks for joining us. It's been fantastic having your insights.
Thank you. And thank you very much.
And thank you very much for joining us on this last chat that we're having today of the Consumer Goods Forum. But rest assured, we're going to be back tomorrow. See you tomorrow for another packed afternoon full of conversations and insight.